Hi, Sharon, are you there? Okay, I think we might get started. So Sharon, I think you're telling me that you can hear me. Okay, welcome excuse me, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along to this little experiment of sorts. This wasn't quite how I'd hoped to deliver this presentation, but I think we'll do okay. Okay, so I should start off by introducing myself. My name is Helen Babaye-Thimiel and I'm the I'm the business process owner for a research professional. I work in the research development team in the Monash Research Office. So that's Luke McAvaney's team for those of you who know Luke. So that's the group that I sit in. I think we've taken care of some of the housekeeping matters in terms of microphones and volumes. I'm happy for those of you who have your cameras on to put your hands up if you'd like to ask a question or to pop something through in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat as we go, but if you find that you've posted a message and I haven't responded to it, maybe a wave to the camera will alert me to the fact that I've just got to check something there. So I'll start by giving you a brief overview of what research professional is and the resources and support that are available at Monash. Then I'll briefly run through the levels and the type of access that are available, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty. So the first part of it will focus on the discipline hierarchy that underpins the entire funding opportunities database in research professional. The discipline hierarchy is the key thing to understand, and if you understand how that works, that will allow you to set up better searches. It will allow you to understand why your fingerprint behaves in certain ways and whether or not it is something that can be fixed. I'll go through some of the advanced search features in more detail. I'll run through the email alerts, and then we'll talk specifically about fingerprints towards the end, because it's important to understand the way RP is structured and the way it works in order to understand how the fingerprint actually operates. So we'll do it in that order. Okay, so what is Research Professional? It's a funding it's an online service rather. It's UK based. They've been around. It was a privately owned company. They've been around for about 26 years, and about a year and a half ago they were bought out by a group called Ex Libris, and they own a number of other products. One of which is the Pivot Funding Opportunities database, which is widely used in the UK. Research Professional has a really strong, Pivot is widely used in the US. Research Professional has a really strong presence in the UK, through parts of Europe, right through Australia and New Zealand, and parts of Africa. And I guess the thinking is, well, not I guess, so the idea behind Ex Libris acquiring both Pivot and Research Professional is that they're hoping to I guess capitalise on some of the opportunities that that gives them. So in terms of being able to see more funding opportunities, because they'll merge the back-end operations, so we should see more funding opportunities visible in Research Professional over time. And we've started to see in the last 6 months some additional functionality that's been rolled out within RP. And depending on whether you're recent users or how frequently you use it, you may or may not have noticed these additional features, and we'll run through them as we go through the session. I'll share my screen at this point. Let's just see how this goes. Okay, can I just have a hands up from someone that you're seeing the screen that says Research Professional? Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Diana. Okay, so there's 3. Let me try and get this out of the way. Oh, okay, they can move over here. Okay, so there are 3 aspects to Research Professional. So one of them is the Funding Opportunities Database, which is what we're going to talk about today. Sorry, I'll just hide myself there. Okay, so the Funding Opportunities Database is the main, well, it's the component that we're going to talk about. There's a news service, a research news service, which is how Research Professional actually began. It started off as a research news service, and the Funding Opportunities was a sort of a sideline, and then it grew from there. And then the third component of RP are the tips and funding insight aspects to it. So I'll just really quickly just show you where the news and the funding insight information is. I'll only spend a couple of minutes on that. If there's things you want, if there's questions, if you want to know more about these aspects, we'll deal with them at the end of the session. So news you can find by clicking on this little tab up here. And so it's research policy news, it's research practice news, it's information from funders, it's information from governments, it's intended to be just any and all research related news. RP have their own team of journalists, so it's their own content that they're posting. Information is posted and as and when there is something to post, so it's not that it goes up on particular days. You can subscribe to receive research funding news, and then again that comes out depending on which components you've subscribed to. You'll receive that information as it's posted on the website. And it's broken down into little, into further. So each of these links here breaks it down further. So if we click on Australia, for example, and just wait for it to load. And so there's university news, there's industry news, there's politics, government agencies. So you can click further and get more information. And yeah, just click on the various stories. So it's just to know that it's there and just something to spend some time on later having a look at. The other part of it, which is what they refer to as funding insight, but it's not actually labelled as such within the database, which is a little bit confusing. If we click on the funding tab here, each of these links here, so we'll click on social sciences. It's arranged, so RP is kind of built or organised in four main discipline groupings. So biomedical, engineering, physical, social sciences, and arts and humanities. And we'll see a bit more about that when we get into the discipline structure of it. And so you can see down here that there's, well, sometimes there are news articles, information about new calls. Inside articles tend to be interviews with individuals, you know, how they, I don't know, how they got a postdoc in Japan, setting up partnerships. There are a couple of really interesting articles posted a little while back on how to address childcare responsibilities when writing research proposals. They're worth having a bit of a search through here. If I can find the links later, I'll send them to you. But they were quite, it gave some interesting examples and interesting an interesting perspective on how issues around carer and child rearing responsibilities could or should be addressed in funding opportunity in research proposals, and why. And so just it's worth having a look in here from time to time just to see what articles have been posted. Now I realise when I've got it set up like this, I can't actually see the chat. Sorry, bear with me. I've just realised I can't see if there are any. I can't see the chat window. So if there are comments, I can't see anything. So how do I? Okay, sorry. I've just got the chat window up. I'm sorry. Yep, okay, no, I've got I didn't have the chat window open. Sorry, so back to these. Okay, so they're the different components of research professional. Oh, sorry, there's also some, so that what I've just pointed you, excuse me. I'm sorry. So that was information that's relevant to, I guess, clustered by the different discipline areas. There's also more general know-how information that's not necessarily applicable to one or other discipline grouping, and that's posted under the know-how tab. And there's additional links you can click on here. ANZ stands for Australia and New Zealand, and so that's they're particular articles or content that have been written for the Australia and New Zealand component of the RP market, for want of a better word. When you're logged on to Research Professional, it knows where you are, it knows that you're at Monash University, and so there's the content that you see in the know-how section will be different to what you'd be seeing if you were at a university in Europe, for example. So it's somewhat more tailored to the Australian market, whereas the news articles are global. Okay, so I think that's all I want to sort of cover in terms of those other features of Research Professional. In terms of support, support for research professionals, so when we relaunched it a couple of years ago, it was brought in under the My Research umbrella. So the My Research support team can assist you with any login difficulties that you might have. I've just realised. Sorry, I'm just going to change swap screen here for a minute. Now let's start. So bear with me. Okay. So if you click on the research tile and go to My Research, can somebody give me a thumbs up that you're seeing that you saw My Research tile? I've got the right screen up. Yep, thanks, Peter. So, and then if you click on funding, and then click on support material. Now, unfortunately, there's another step here. You've then got to scroll down and select funding. And you'll find that there are some help guides here. I won't go through them. You can check them at your leisure. A couple of things I will say. This search guide here, the Save a Funding Opportunity to Google Calendar, has been updated. The new one hasn't been posted up here yet. I'm hoping it'll be up at the end of the week. But at the end of the session, I will email you the revised how-to guide for saving funding opportunities to Google Calendar. It breaks down in step-by-step detail the different ways in which you can add things to your calendar and also remove them from your calendar. That's something I won't be covering at any length in today's presentation. It's too detailed. It's just something that's a lot easier to run through with a step-by-step guide. And I'm more than happy for you to come back to me with any questions you've got when you're trying to use one of the guides if there's something that's unclear. The other thing I'll also post out after the session, there's another guide that I'm working on. It is a work in progress at the moment. You'll see there's one here on conducting an advanced search, and that's, I guess, an introduction to advanced searches. What I'm working on at the moment is getting into it in more detail, because I'm finding it's one thing to have some information, some general information, but for people who are actively trying to use Research Professional, you want that more detailed guide. And so I'll also send that out at the end of the session. And I'd be happy actually for any comments or suggestions or feedback about what it covers or what you'd like it to cover that it doesn't do. I'm just trying to, I guess, come up with a, trying to see what else I can add to it that will work for users. So that's it. Yeah. So Research Professional. So support is through the my research support helpline or email desk at the moment, and that's primarily for login details. If you've got questions, more technical questions about how to use Research Professional, just come to, you're welcome to come to me directly, because my research support won't be able to address those. Okay, I think that's, in terms of accessing Research Professional, so I hope that everybody's has worked out how to log into it now. So there's 3 ways to access it. If you're on campus or you're on VPN, you don't need to log into Research Professional because it's a university-wide subscription. You can just go in there and use it. You'll be using it as a guest user, so you can search for things, but you can't save funding opportunities. You can't add them to your calendar. If you log in using your account, then you'll have access to save things, to add them to your calendar. You can also email funding opportunities to others, and they'll know, to colleagues, for example, and they'll know that they're coming from you. And then the third, I guess, level or type of access is the Research Professional fingerprint. Now, fingerprints are created for anybody who has a pure profile, where that pure profile has enough information for Research Professional to be able to create one. So we send RP a list of new users, a list of all users, a list of everybody with a pure profile 4 times a year. And we ask them to check to make sure that everybody who has a pure profile has a fingerprint, and where they don't, to create one for them. And so I think most of you who are eligible to have one currently. I know a couple of people who'd registered for the talk don't, but they don't currently have pure profiles. Okay, I'm going to switch over to another screen. So I'm just going to stop share on this one. So if we go back to the Research Professional screen, okay, so funding opportunities, or the funding opportunities database. So we click on funding and then click on advanced opportunities search. So you can either select the option here or here. They'll take you through to the same place. Now, the first thing I'll do is we'll just run through the features of a funding opportunity. Ignore what I'm doing here. I'll run through a little bit more. We'll run through that in detail later. I just want to open up a funding opportunity for you. Funding opportunity record. So let's click on this one. So there are approximately 23,000 funding opportunities that are posted in Research Professional. About 12,000 of them are researchers in Australia are eligible to apply for and or to participate in. The other 10 or 11,000 where Australian researchers generally are not. So we now Previously, we only had visibility of the funding opportunities that Australian researchers could access. Since early last year, we now have visibility of all the funding opportunities in the database, and I'll show you how to switch that on and off. The reason for giving you visibility of funding opportunities that you aren't eligible to apply for is that if you're collaborating with researchers at other institutions, at overseas institutions, it could be something that they can apply for that you can collaborate on, or you might go on as a co-PI. So it's just to assist those kinds of collaborations. So the funding opportunity record. So we have the name of the scheme, the funding body name here. The closing date is given here. Now, closing date will be the earliest applicable date. So if there's a scheme that's got an EOI phase, the EOI date will appear here instead, so that you don't miss out on the funding opportunity by missing the earlier stage 1 closing. There's information here that's taken from the funder, usually from their press release or their website or the intro to the guidelines. I should point out there's this thin line down here. All the information to the left of this line here is entered by research professional in the UK, so we don't have access to edit any of the information that's here. Information on the right-hand side that's under the Our Institution heading, Monash University can edit. So you will sometimes find information here. So if there's, for example, if there's a limit, schemes where there's a limit on the number of funding, on the number of applications that we can submit, if there's an internal shortlisting process, that information will be posted here. And there's also the opportunity for individuals to express interest in the funding opportunity. So you do that by hitting the express interest button. When you do that, what you should realise is that if you hit the express interest here, everybody within Monash is able to see that, so they can see that you're interested in that funding opportunity. The idea behind setting it up in that way was so that they were, I guess, hoping that it might, the idea is that it might assist collaboration between researchers within the same institution. The other thing that happens when you hit the express interest button is it will send an email to the two funding teams in the research office, so to the ARC team and also to the medical health sciences team. So they will then know that you're interested in that funding opportunity, and they'll get in touch with you and just check to see if there's something you need, or if there's particular information you need to be aware of. So it's just to allow that communication to occur. So that's as far as that bit of it goes. So back on this side, so we've got the information for the funding opportunity. This link here I find quite useful. It's a direct link to the funder's webpage for the information on the funding opportunity. So if there's a particular funding opportunity you know of and you know about it, you just can't find the guidelines or you can't find the form, if you can look it up in Research Professional and then click on this link, it should take you straight to the funder's webpage. And then if we scroll down a bit more, then we've got some fields of information here. So the closing date, which is up the top, deadline information. So this one here is a forecast call. So the funder hasn't yet announced that applications are open for this scheme. Date added is also the date that the funding opportunity was last edited or updated. So it's both, it's updated or added. There's some award type information here, and we'll talk about that in more detail when we get into the advanced search features. The one thing I really want to draw your attention to is this section down here that says index with these disciplines. And you can see that there's some terms here: environmental science, education, etc., etc. Every single funding opportunity in Research Professional is indexed with one or more discipline terms, depending on the scope of that funding opportunity. And your fingerprint is made up of discipline terms. And so the terms that are in your fingerprint are looking for a match for the discipline terms in the funding opportunity. And also when you're setting up an advanced search, the terms that you put in your discipline search, again, are looking for a match back here. And so if you've got funding opportunities turning up in your fingerprint generated alerts or any searches that you've set up, and you're not sure why those particular funding opportunities are appearing, if you have a look at the index with these discipline sections, section, it will tell you which term or terms in your search or in your fingerprint are causing these types of funding opportunities to appear. And just one more thing on this screen, there's a comments box down here. Don't use it. Please don't use it, ever. It's global. So if you post a message here, it'll go out to all users across all institutions, across all countries, and Research Professional will be able to see it. So if you've got any questions, please contact us directly, or you can use the express interest button here, but don't post anything down here. Okay, now I've lost the chat window. Okay, cool, okay, that's back up. Okay, so I should just say, are there any questions at this point before we launch into the actual funding opportunities side of it? Okay, nothing's popping up. Okay, so if we go into advanced opportunity search, okay, and we click on discipline. So the way Research Professional has a discipline database that they've created themselves. It's approximately 2,000 discipline terms, and they're organised in a tree and branch structure. And so it starts off really general at the start, and then it breaks down into, becomes more detailed and more detailed and more detailed again. And so at the very top, we've got these 4 groupings here. And then if we click on social, if you click on any of these blue triangles, if there's a blue triangle, it opens up. And so if you click on that and then click on that one there again, so you can see that we've got education, which sits under social sciences. Education has as discipline terms or categories underneath it, education programs and curriculum, education theory, higher education, schools. It also has this one here, further community education and training, and this one doesn't have a blue triangle next to it. What that tells us is that that's the bottom of that particular branch, so that this doesn't break down into further discipline groupings. If we click on education theory, for example, you can see that there are all these discipline terms that sit beneath it. So a funding opportunity will be indexed with the discipline term that is most relevant to that funding opportunity. So depending on the scope of the funding opportunity, it might be indexed with something that's quite specific, or it might be indexed with a term that's higher up the branch where it's less disciplinary specific. Now, the thing to understand with the discipline search is you've got to make precise selections of what it is that you're looking for, either in terms of the actual term. You can then choose, okay, so let's do it this way. So if I choose, for example, education theory, you can see that it's added down here. Now, this little section down here, which is really easy to ignore and should actually be in flashing lights and highlight, says match these disciplines, and it's auto set to exactly. So I've selected education theory. It will give me any funding opportunities that are indexed just with the term education theory. If there are funding opportunities that have a more specific focus, I don't know, philosophy of education, education law, any of these down here, they're not going to be returned in my search because I have selected education theory and the default match is exactly. So it's not like a Google search where it will bring you related terms. It's a specific choice. If you click on advanced, you then see the options to include exact, broader matches, narrower matches. Now you can choose any combination you want here. So if I'm interested in education theory, but I also want to pick up the discipline terms that sit beneath it because some or all of them are relevant to me, then I have to select narrow matches as well. So if I then hit update and hit search, it's brought up 64 items for me. If I, this little icon here is the edit icon. So if I click on that again, and I just go back to exactly. So I've accepted the default term that I would have had initially and hit update and hit search again. I've got 4 options. So you need to be really clear about what it is that you're searching for or that you're trying to bring up, because it's very easy in Research Professional to not be searching for what it is you think you're searching for. It's unless you've got that understanding of how the discipline structure works, it's very easy to have to run searches and it's just not picking up what you think you're actually trying to find on the system. Okay, so we'll just go back into discipline. Okay, so you can browse. So if you want to know what the discipline terms are, you can have a browse through here and just, click on these as you go down and just, the triangles will open up. You can have a look at what's there. And this will also help you understand how the terms are structured and where they sit or how they're nested. So that's through the Browse tab. If we have a look at the Search tab, now say for example, you don't know, you're looking for something, but you're not quite sure what terms Research Professional is using, and you certainly don't want to browse through the branches for all, through the multiple branches to find a particular term. So you can start typing in here. So if we say, for example, we're looking at, I don't know, let's try. Gender role, well, actually not even gender roles, let's just go gen. If I hit the search button, okay, it will bring me, okay, let's go there, that way. You don't have to know the exact discipline terms that are in Research Professional. You can start to type a string of text, and when you hit the search button, it will bring up the discipline terms that have that string of text in there. You can make your selections from here and they'll be added to the window. We've got that same situation down here where the default match is to match them exactly, or you can go in here to make a different set of searches here. The other thing you have when you're searching in the search tab is this hover text. So if you hold it over the top, it shows you where the discipline term sits in that hierarchy that we saw in the Browse tab. So for example, feminist women's and gender studies sits in the social sciences branch. It sits in society, sociology. Sorry, you can't see me while I wave my hands around, I've realised. So society, sociology, feminist and women's gender studies. And so you know the branch that it sits in. If you have a look at this next one, so the other thing is, so we talked about branches and so how these 2,000 terms are set up in different, are organised in different branches. Terms can also appear in more than one branch. And so we can see here that gender roles and sexuality sits in one branch in social sciences. So it actually sits beneath women's and gender studies. You can also see that it sits in biomedical. So under psychology, which sits beneath. So if you go into the biomedical branch, that breaks down into medicine and health. It then goes down into psychology, psychiatry, neuroscience, psychology, social psychology, which breaks off that, and then beneath that are gender roles and sexuality. And then there's also another branch that sits in social psych that comes up through sociology. And so this will give you some understanding of why. So the fingerprint searches that you receive, the fingerprint searches are set up to match the terms exactly and broader. So broader meaning to go up the branch. And so if you have terms that in your fingerprint that are also indexed in the biomedical space, it will often result in you receiving funding opportunities that have a medical focus, which won't be relevant to what it is that you're interested in. And so I know that I've heard from a number of researchers that they're receiving funding opportunities that just aren't relevant. And unfortunately, it's particularly difficult for researchers in education because a lot of the commonly used terms that I've seen in the fingerprints of education researchers also originate or sit in the biomedical space. So things like cognitive processes, group dynamics. Let's have a look. Group dynamics and collective behaviour, for example, sits in the biomedical grouping. Social networks and social media, creativity sits in biomedicine, believe it or not. Social psych. And so you may find that you'll get a better search by, if you're finding that your fingerprint is bringing up terms that aren't relevant for you, you'll be better served by setting up an advanced search and setting it so it matches your terms exactly for certain terms, particularly for those streams that sit in the biomedical branches. Have I lost everybody here, or would anybody like to ask any questions at this point about this aspect of it? Okay, got 2 thumbs up from Peter, thank you. Okay, so that's the discipline. So that's the way the discipline structure is had. Oh, the other thing I should, sorry, that sometimes gets stuck. The other thing I should point out when we're having a look, so when you're in here, so the hover text tells you the branch that a term sits in. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you if that's the terminal point in that branch. So if we see here, for example, so we can see the feminist women's and gender studies sits under sociology. And so we know the branch that it sits in, but we don't know if that's the last term or if it breaks down further. If I then, when we hovered over gender roles and sexuality, we can see that it actually sits under this particular term here. Now, I don't know, we can't tell from this screen which other discipline terms sit under this particular one. So this is where you might find, so it depends on how detailed you want to be in your searches. What you could do is just say, look, I want that, and I'm just going to pick advanced, exact, and narrower, and we'll just see what it picks up. Right, and so we try this and we hit search and it gives me 98 items. If we go back there and then just hit exactly, now I have 38. Okay, now I'm curious. So there's a lot more terms that sit beneath it. What are they? What other discipline terms are there? So if we go back in here, if we go back into browse, I know if I remember the, I've gone down the wrong way, haven't I? Oh no, here we go. Sociology. Okay, so it shows that that's the one that I've got ticked. If we click on that blue triangle, we can see the other terms that sit beneath it. And so now I can choose, if I want, other specific, so if I'm particularly interested in women's rights and women in science, and maybe psychology of gender and of sex and gender, and I want feminist and women's and gender studies. So now I can make my search a little more specific. And now I've got 70 items. So it's just that balance of how you sort of working out, you'll need to play around with it a little bit, and just see, depending on what it is that that you're interested in, and then just see what it's bringing up for you. Okay. If we just run through some of the other fields in the advanced search section. So we've chosen a number of disciplines. Terms are also indexed by award type. Now there's, I think, around 27 different award types here. I've lost count of the number. It's quite a diverse list because research professional try and reflect the scope of the funding opportunity, and funders have so many different ways in which they position their funding opportunities. And so you can limit, so say for example, if you were looking for a fellowship, you can go through, so there's early career fellowships, there's mid-career fellowships, senior fellowships. If you're looking just for general grant funding, so your ARC type grants, in that sense, you would click on grants undirected. You can, there's travel funding, so travel for conferences and travel for research purposes, not that there's much of that happening at the moment. But there are a number of different award types that you're able to, if you wanted to narrow your search a little bit, you can select the award types that you're interested in. You can also select the award types that you're not interested in. And so if you're finding that you're getting, say for example, a lot of stuff about prizes, and you're really not interested in prizes and you really don't want travel funding at the moment because it's pointless. So you can select those three options and hit update. And where it says here award type, instead of is any of, and that down box you hit is not any of. And so your search will now exclude any funding opportunities that are indexed with any of these terms. I should point out that the award type that is given to a funding opportunity is the primary purpose of that funding opportunity. So for example, I don't know, a DECRA or a future fellowship, for argument's sake, from the ARC, which has a fellowship, which is primarily a fellowship, but it also has a travel component. It's not going to come up when you look for travel because that's not the primary purpose of that funding opportunity. So that's not to say that there won't be some other funding that's available through funding of that type that's available through other funding opportunities. It's just that it's not the primary purpose of that. Now that wasn't always the case. That RP corrected that about a year and a half ago. Previously to that, it was picking up any award type that applied to that funding opportunity. And so they've just tightened that down a bit more. So you can search for award type. You can select particular funders if you like, and you can either start to, if you know a particular funder name, or you can start to type in some text and see what comes up. There's an A to Z search, and you can search through here as well. So that's if there's particular funders that you are interested in. You can put in a closing date range. So you can look for, say for example, you wanted to know what you could apply for in the next 6 months. So you could set either actual dates, so funding opportunities that close after 6 months from here. It's funding opportunities that close, actually no, it's the wrong way, isn't it? Sorry. Funding opportunities that close before, I don't know, the 30th of November, because I don't want to be working on funding opportunities after that. And anything that closes after the 31st of May, because I won't have an opportunity to work up to submit anything that closes before that anyway. So you can direct that, so either by using dates or just putting in number of days. So it's anything that closes in more than 30 days and less than, I don't know, 270 days. You hit the update button. Every time you make a change, you have to hit search again. Okay, so now we can see we're down to 16 funding opportunities from this longer list. You can also specify award amount. So if you were looking for small pots of funding, you're really not interested in anything that's in the larger, you might say, you know, you want anything that's less than $20,000. Don't worry about the currency thing up here. RP will do the, they'll do the conversion at the back end. And so if it's a funding opportunity that's in US dollars, it will adhere to whatever you've, sorry, let me phrase it again. So you select the currency so it knows that you're interested in funding opportunities of less than, that are valued at less than 20,000 AUD. If the funding opportunity is in US dollars or euro or whatever, it will do the conversion. And so it will bring up those funding opportunities that fit in within that selection that you've made. Okay, so we've got that as well. And so now it's broken, it's got rid of the larger funding opportunities. Oh, the other thing that's come up here, and actually I'm really pleased it has, the NIH, the National Institutes of Health in the US, have approximate, so there are, I've forgotten the number now, I think it's about 27 different institutes that are all under the one umbrella grouping. They each have multiple, when I say multiple funding opportunities, across all the NIH institutes, there's approximately 1,000 funding opportunities listed in Research Professional that come from NIH. If you're working in a space where you're finding that a lot of funding opportunities have are coming up from, and they're from the NIH, and you're absolutely not interested in NIH funding, because there's so many different groupings, it's difficult to remove, to say you don't want those particular NIH funders. You'd have to enter them all individually. The other way to go about it is to say all text does not contain NIH, and so we'll take it out. So there's a number of different ways that you can build your search, putting in additional criteria. Now, because we're down to 6, I might just take out some of these actually. So I want a slightly larger list to work with. Okay, so let's go to, actually let's take that out as well. Okay, so now we've got 70 items. So we're back to our original search. We've got 70 items. There's a lot to scroll through and look at them this way. At least I find, for me, it's a little bit, I might have a quick look and see if there's something that jumps out, but then to need to click on them individually is quite time consuming. We've now got a new feature that was released late last year, and that's the advanced download. So say, for example, we just wanted to have a look at all of them. You can, if you tick up here, it will pick up all the funding opportunities in the list. Or if there was just selected ones that you wanted to have a look at, you could do it this way. Now, because I've come up with 70 items, the default here is 50. I've got to make sure that I change that so it's a number greater than the number I've got here. Otherwise, when I run my search, it will be limited by the number that's here. So if I'd left it at 50, it would only return the first 50 funding opportunities. I've missed out on the last 20. So if we select that there, go here, hit the Actions button and go to Advanced Download. It opens up this window here. I can now select Excel from up here. I can choose which of these headings I want in my search. At this stage, I'm going to say I want all of them. And disciplines I like to have up here so I can see it. And so you can move the order around as well. You hit download. And open it up down here. Now, I don't, Peter, can you see, you can't see the spreadsheet that's open. Can you see the spreadsheet that's opened up? Yeah, okay. And so what it's done now is it's opened up a spreadsheet for me. And so it's got the name, the funder name, the closing date, deadline information, disciplines, award type. And if we scroll along here, we've got summary information. We've also got the full text information as well. The website directly to the funding body, and also the research professional link. Now that I'm in Excel, I can set up filters and start to have a look through the information this way. So I might want to filter, I guess if rather than filtering out, filtering in or out in too detailed a way in your initial search, because you're not quite sure if you're missing out on things that you might be interested in, you can choose to leave a broader search and then do your filtering through the spreadsheet. And then you can do a search in the spreadsheet for key terms. You can read the information that's in the summary or in the full text without having to click on each funding opportunity separately. So it's just an easier, faster way to just go through some of the, the funding opportunities. Similarly, you've got the different award types here where you might say, you know what, I just want to have a closer look at the fellowships and the prizes, and then filter down that way and just have a look. And you've got that summary information there without needing to click into each funding opportunity. So I'll close that spreadsheet down. Okay, so if we go back to so are we back to my research professional screen, Peter? Yep, okay, thank you. So that's how we get the advanced download. You can email a funding. So from this, let's untick that. So say I wanted somebody to know about this funding opportunity here, from the Gates Foundation. If I click on the down arrow, I can email that funding opportunity to somebody, to a colleague. They'll get a link with the details, and they'll be able to have a look at it. But remember, they'll only be able to open it if they're on the VPN or if they've logged on to Research Professional. So Research Professional is closed to anybody who doesn't have an account or who isn't on the Monash network. So you can email them the information, or you can add it to your calendar. I'll only show you one thing about the calendar. As I said, this is in great detail in the how-to guide. I just want to point out that the default will be for funding opportunities to appear in your calendar on the funded deadline. You can, however, set it up so it appears in your calendar ahead of the deadline, maybe 14 days out from the closing date as an example. Or you can, whatever it is you might want to put in there, and you hit update calendar. Make sure you do that. Otherwise that won't take. And then you follow the rest of the prompts that'll be in the help guide. But it's just handy to know that if you're doing some searching now for things that you might want to apply for later in the year, you can have those appear in your calendar earlier than when they close. Okay, so back to this screen. I guess really quickly, the other thing I want to show you are and or searches. So if I'm looking for, okay, so if I go into discipline and I'm interested in educational psychology, and I'm also interested in child development. So I've popped them in there and I hit search. It will give me 50 funding opportunities. It's returned 50 funding opportunities. So setting up a search this way gives me funding opportunities that are indexed either with educational psychology or with child development or with both. If I was interested, if I wanted to be a little more specific, and so I want funding opportunities that are indexed with both of these terms, then what I would do is hit the discipline button again and do a search for child development, update, and hit the search button. And now I've got 4. So having these 2 terms appear like this makes this an and search. And so you've got the scope to either to make it a broader search or to narrow it down. But you've got to be aware of what this does when you're setting up your searches. I've seen when people attempt to set up their own searches, they sometimes inadvertently set up an "and" search where they might have actually wanted an "or" search. To confuse things a little further, so we're in discipline at the moment, and we said that if we have the two terms side by side, it's an "or" search. If I'm using the "all text" feature, and say I'm interested in funding opportunities, I've got some contacts in Sweden, and I want to see anything that's got the word Sweden or Swedish in it. If I just put the terms side by side in there, it will give me 34 items. If I stick an "or" between them, I get 72. And if I do it as an "and", we're back to 34. Now, I've detailed this in the work in progress in the advanced guide that I'll send out after the search, after today's session, but it's just to be mindful that there's different ways of that the "and" or search works slightly differently in the discipline field than the way it works in all text. And it's something that you can play around with a little bit further when you're setting up your searches. So the other thing that we can do with this, with our searches, so let's just go back to, here, and I've created a search for education, advanced, exact and narrower, and I'm looking for undirected grants and prizes, update search. Okay, so I've created this little search. I can also save it. If you hit this button up here, the orange button, I can create a new search. So I will call this search education webinar, and I can either save it or save an alert. If I save it, I can go back in. Peter, I just saw your question. I'll come back to it in a sec once I finish this. So I can save thank you for prompting me. I can create, so I can save the search and go back and run it manually later, or I can save an alert. I'll just show you where that goes. Okay, so it's saved it successfully. Save an alert means that I will now get weekly updates from Research Professional on funding opportunities that match this criteria here. The thing to understand with the weekly updates, and this is the same for fingerprints as well. So whether it's your fingerprint or whether it's a search that you've created, the purpose of the weekly updates is to give you fresh news, or to let you know what's changed in that space in the last week. So by saving it and sending it up to alert, I will receive information from Research Professional when there's when funding opportunities are added to Research Professional or edited or any other in any other way updated in the previous week that meet these criteria. It has nothing to do, the weekly alerts have nothing to do with what's coming up, what's closing soon. It's just fresh news. And so you things will appear in your weekly alert in the week in which they change, and they won't appear again. So if you're relying on your weekly alerts, you'll need to keep an eye on them week by week so that you don't miss out on anything, if you're interested in keeping a really close eye. Alternatively, you just run the manual search, and this isn't, when you run the search manually, it's not limited by what's changed or what's closing in the next or what's changed in the last week. It's only limited by what other criteria you've added to the search. Now, to see your email alerts, you go up here in the top right-hand side, and I can see the search that I've created, so education webinar. I can edit it and make changes to the search and save it again. I can switch it off so it stops alerting. Or you can see I've got another search here, or if I just untick it, if it's unticked, it's not going to appear in any weekly alerts. And so you can save your search without and to go back and run it manually later without it sending you weekly alerts. Okay, so back to the question that Peter was asking. So funding opportunities that are not, okay, so it's this option here. Now I'm not thrilled with the way it works. So at the moment, we're looking at funding opportunities. So the default is that we get to see funding opportunities that are open to researchers in Australia and that researchers in Australia can apply for or might be eligible to participate in. If I then tick open to applications from beyond my country, it now brings in all of the other funding opportunities, but I can't remove. But what it does is it's additive. So it's now added to the funding opportunities that Australians can search for. I can't flip it and say, just give me the ones that are from overseas. So it just requires a little more filtering, a little more manual manipulation than I would have preferred to be able to play around with that. Yep. Okay. So that's okay. Has that addressed that question sufficiently, or is there more to it? Is there anything more that people want to know about it? That's it. Okay. I am going to switch over now. I'm just going to log out of this screen and switch into another one. I want to show you what a fingerprint looks like. Now, do I have a volunteer to show somebody's fingerprint? Or I can pick another one up. Sorry, I was logged on as an administrator on the system. I have more, I've got some buttons that you don't have, and so I generally demonstrate in an ordinary user account. Okay, so do you, do you currently see the screen that says Monash University Australia? Yeah, okay, thanks, Peter. So if I just go here, sorry, that's what I've done. Sorry, bear with me for a minute. Okay. So for those of you who have a fingerprint, and I think that's most of the people here, this is what your fingerprint looks like. If you've never looked for it or never looked at it, you can find it by clicking on the email alerts button in the top right-hand corner. I've assumed that everybody's logged in. I didn't actually ask this at the start. So I assumed that everybody was able to manage the login details and have logged in as themselves. You'll know if you're logged in, if your name appears here. If you're accessing Research Professional because you're on the VPN, but you haven't logged in, then there just won't be anything there. It will just be these three fields of information. So you won't be able to see your email alerts. But if you're logged in and if you hit email alerts, if you have a fingerprint, your fingerprint will come up first, and that's got this, what do we call this, apricot coloured band across the top. And then if you scroll further down, is where you see my profile, these blue bands, and this is where the searches that you set up and save manually will appear, but your fingerprint is up at the very top. You can switch off your fingerprint if you like, but just sliding that, that toggle over there, and it'll just stop it sending you weekly alerts. You can see which terms, so what RP does is their little, I don't know what they use, a bot or whatever they do, it does a first pass through the pure profile, and it picks up a whole bunch of, just based on keywords, publication titles, I guess any words that are in your pure profile. It'll do a first pass through and assign a first set of discipline terms just on that first pass through. And then it seems to do, I don't know exactly how, this is, I guess, the secret source stuff, but it then does a second pass through and then ticks certain discipline terms. And so it's only the ticked discipline terms that are contributing to the weekly fingerprint alerts that you receive. So you can tick or untick terms. If you untick them, they'll sit there, but they won't contribute to the alert. You can remove them entirely if you're not interested in those particular terms. If you do decide to go in and remove remove terms from your fingerprint, please make sure you leave at least one term in there. The database has a bit of a fit if you delete everything and leave it with no, because it has a fingerprint, but then there's nothing there. It needs to have at least one term sitting there, even if you have it unticked. So you can tick and untick things. You can add terms down here by hitting this search button here, search here in that area of research. And again, you don't have to know what terms you're looking for. You can type in a string of text. So what it's doing down here is looking for that same set of discipline terms that we looked at earlier. And so it will bring up any words, any terms that have that string of text that you type in. What you don't have when you're doing it here is you don't have the hover text. So when you're picking something up, you don't know where it sits in the branch. So you don't know, for example, that if you're going to pick up cognitive and behavioural therapies, that it's actually sitting in biomedical. You can't tell that from here. So you'll need to have another window open to actually check the hover text and have an understanding for where the term sits. I honestly, I think particularly if you're a researcher in education, I think you're better served by an advanced search, because you've got more options. So the fingerprint only allows you to select terms. You can't add any other criteria, and it's hardwired to give you exact and broader. What something RP activated, I think in the second half of last year, is this little thing down here. So if you click on view as a search, what it does now is it will open up your fingerprint search as an advanced search. So it's the start of an advanced search. It's picked up just the terms that are ticked, and you can now edit it further. So you can then add additional award types or closing dates or any other information that you might want, and save it as an advanced search. If we click on the edit button here, we can see that it is hardwired, it's exact and broader. And so what you might want to do is, with some terms, you might just want to go exact only. It's a little bit of a balance. I'll give you an example. So say for ARC funding opportunities, they've got a really broad remit. Now, okay, everybody knows about the ARC, but the ARC funding opportunities are indexed with the term any. So if you're doing a search that's limited to education funding opportunities, you're not going to bring up the ARC funding opportunities, because the remit of that funding opportunities is broader. So when you're searching, do a little bit of a play around. If there's particular funders that you're aware of, things that say your colleagues have been successful in receiving funding from a particular funder or particular funding opportunity, look it up in RP, see how it's indexed. That might give you some guidance as to how you might want to structure an additional search. I generally suggest that you have more than one search set up, because you don't, if you try and put, it's too hard to try and put everything into one search. Sometimes you want to search specifically because you don't want to include all the broader, less relevant things in there, but at the same time, you don't want to ignore those. And if you have your broad funding opportunities and your narrow focus funding opportunities in the one search, it's a lot more to filter through. So you're able to set up different searches. So we had a look earlier when we were saving. Okay, let's just, how we do this? So let's just say we'll go, I want to do education, and I want exact narrow, right? So I just want to do funding opportunities that have that narrower focus. Well, somewhat narrow. So I can save that. It's given me a whole heap, but that's okay. Let's just, we want to save that. And I'm going to create a new search, and I'm going to call it education narrow. And I've saved it. I also want something that will give me the broader ones. Now I've already got the exact matches in my first search. So here I'm just going to go education broader. So if I update that, hit the search button. Okay, save that. And I'm going to call this one education broader and save. So now I've got two searches. If we go up here to my email alerts, I can see I've got these two searches. Now they're not ticked because I didn't set them up to alert. I've just saved them. You can create, so what RP does, so you can see that I've got multiple searches that I've saved over time. They're all sitting under the one blue banner under my profile, which means that all of my searches are going to contribute to the one email. If I want my broader and my narrower, I can set it up so that the broader and the narrower come to me in two separate emails. So then I know what I'm looking at. I can create a new profile, and I can call this, whatever name you give it will appear in the email subject line, so you'll know what you're receiving. So if I create one called Education Broader, what it does is it copies all my searches, so I don't have to recreate the searches. And then I can, now they're in alpha order, and I've ticked Education Broader. And so I have created a profile called Education Broader. The only search that contributes to it is this one, because that's the only one that's ticked. And I'll receive a weekly alert, which has the broader funding opportunities. I can then, if I wanted to, create another one. And here I am selecting narrow. And so now what will happen is from next week, I will get two different emails. One which will have the broader funding opportunities, and that will have Education Broader in the subject line. Another one will have the narrower funding opportunities. If I get sick of them, I can switch off the email alerts. And so the searches are still there, but they're just not sending me alerts. I can go in and edit the search if I want, and then save it again. So if I edit it, if I've decided I want the broader ones to be larger funding opportunities, so I only want things that are greater than $20,000. So it's now in italics with an asterisk, so I know that I've made some changes. I can hit save, and then I can save over the existing search, or I can create a new name. In this instance, I'm just going to save it over the top of it because I prefer this new version of it. So there's a number of different ways to set up your alerts so that you can filter through the information that comes to you. So I would suggest, if you're interested in receiving alerts, if you have interest in different areas, or if you're finding, if there's small pots of money that you want to be able to see, and there's also larger things that you want to know about, then I would suggest that you do that by setting up separate profiles in the search window. If you're doing searches manually, I would highly recommend the advanced download option and downloading information in the spreadsheet and just filtering that way, rather than trying to read through the results as they appear on the screen. I mean, I find this useful to be able to have a quick glance through, like just sort of as I scroll down. But, you know, if it came to clicking on each of these individually and seeing what's there, I'd much rather read through the spreadsheet. But you have the options, so depending on what works best for you. Sorry, I'm just reading through my notes to see. I guess the other thing I should say with the fingerprints, so I talked about the fact that it's a scraping that's picked up off the pure profile. They're not scraped regularly. Once your fingerprint has been created, it's set. So there's a couple of things to know there. By definition, the fingerprint is based on where you've been, not where you're going. So if you're somebody who's been around for a little while and you were researching in areas X and Y when you started, and now you're moving towards A and B, your fingerprint alert isn't going to know, it's going to still pick up things based on X and Y, because that's what's in your pure profile, they're your publications, and it's not going to pick up the areas that you're interested in. So you want to edit your fingerprint to pick up the areas that you're moving into. Yeah, I think that's the other. I think that's the only other thing regarding fingerprints. The other aspects of it, I think we've covered. I'm going to throw it open to questions. I think I've covered all of the aspects that I wanted to in terms of the fingerprint features, the main features of an advanced search. I'm mindful of the fact that there's a lot of information here, which is why I'm quite keen to have help guides that people can refer to step by step after they come to a session like this, and just be able to go through a little more slowly and just check through some of the things that have been discussed. So as I said, there's the kind of general level help guides that are available on the My Research page at the moment. But there's also the more advanced one that I'll be sending out later this afternoon, which data is great. So Gary, they're not very specific in the information that they give us. My understanding is that Gary, everybody can see Gary's comment. So my understanding is that it's any information that's in the pure profile. So if you've got keywords, if you've got publications, any text at all. So I send them the pure profile links, and they then grab whatever they can off there. Does that help? Sorry, I can't be more specific than that. Just stop share. Okay, sorry, Gary, I just saw there was the rest of the question down here, the internal, the external profile. That's a really good question. I know what I send them, but I'm just trying to think. I don't know whether it's internal or external. Let's just have a look. Must be the, no, it's the external, sorry. So I'll just show you, sorry. Let's just go again. So Gary, it's this one. So that's the external facing one. Sorry, was that shared? No. Yeah, so it's this one here. So it must be the external facing one. Are there any other questions? Have people tried to do, who's used Research Professional? I can see who's got fingerprints. A couple of people have gone in and attempted to create searches. Because most of the activity in RP is from people using the guest account rather than logging in. It's difficult for me to see how much people have actually interacted with it. I mean, the majority of our traffic is through the guest account. So I'm kind of curious if people have tried to set up searches and what they've struggled with, or what they've realised today that they thought they were doing, but in fact they're not. Is there anything that? Okay. Thanks, Peter. I'm just reading that now. Yeah, look, the homework side, look, I've got, it's, I don't expect anybody to, well, I don't expect most people to be able to go away from today and be able to start using it expertly straight away. I found it takes a while just to start to be able to, I guess, to be able to use the different aspects of it. And each time you come to it, you'll understand a little bit more about it than you did the previous time you were using it. I guess I'm hoping that with the help guides and with sessions such as this, we can, I guess, shorten that time frame that's required to get people using it more effectively than they've been able to previously. Okay. If there aren't any other, if nobody has any comments or questions, oh, hi Kim, I don't know whether did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I have a question. Like,
sure.
Actually, I haven't logged on Research Professional, but I have been receiving weekly email alerts, probably because before I used fingerprint or something, but then it gave me all the list of all the funding that I don't find relevant, but then they put it as 4 stars, 5 stars relevance.
Okay.
So yeah, and how to work around it, because
okay, good, really good question. Thank you. I'm pretty sure. Sorry, I looked everybody up beforehand. Yes, you do have a fingerprint, so that is what you're receiving. So it's a fingerprint generated alert. So the 5-star, 4-star, 3-star is. So RP decides, so it's based on the prestige of the funder, the amount of funding that's available. And I've often found that some of the 1- and 2-star funding opportunities, so the 1- and 2-star funding opportunities tend to be the ones with that are smaller, that have a narrower focus. And for some researchers, often they're the more relevant ones. So yeah, the stars are, I don't think the star ranking or rating works particularly well, because their criteria are not an individual's criteria, number one. Number two, in terms of the funding opportunities not being relevant to you, it's to do with the inherent limitation in the fingerprint generated alert, in that it matches exact and broader. If you like, I can bring up your fingerprint and we can have a quick, do you mind? Yeah, would that be helpful?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just pick up your email address from here.
Because I usually received all the funding that I find really irrelevant, like in medicine or psychology.
Yeah, no, exactly. You will, unfortunately. And the reason...
So it's not just me.
No, it's not just you. It's particularly bad for researchers in education. And it's because, as I mentioned briefly earlier, so there's a lot of terms. So I've had a look at people's fingerprints. So everybody who's registered, I've had a look at the fingerprints of the terms that are in there. And so I'm seeing terms like cognitive processes, psychology of language, or psychology of language acquisition, public health, social networks, gender roles. All of these terms actually sit in the biomedical space,
Okay.
which makes sense. It makes sense for RP, but because the fingerprint is hardwired to deliver exact and broader, it then picks up all the terms that sit above in the branch. Let me just share. Okay, so we've got, okay, so this is your alert. So you've got social sciences, education, so they should be okay. There'll be something here. So cognitive, okay, there you go, cognitive processes. So if we have a look, if I duplicate. Can you see me do a search for discipline at the moment? Have I got the right? Yep.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so if I do a search for cognitive processes, you can see that it's indexed in so you are picking up every funding opportunity that is indexed with cognitive processes, cognitive science, neuroscience, psychology, psychiatry, neuroscience, medicine and health, and even more broadly biomedicine. In some areas, yeah, it works really poorly for education researchers just because of where the discipline areas that are relevant to you, where they sit in the RP hierarchy. So the fingerprints are a really useful tool for, I mean, we've got over 6,000 fingerprints across the university. So it's a useful broad tool for getting somewhat individualized information out to researchers without them having to do anything. For people in the biomedical space, because most of their work is firmly within that biomedical branch, they work a bit better. In education's at the other extreme where they work quite poorly. And so if we go back to your fingerprint, so if you turn that one off, so I think it will save. There aren't too many, although I can see your, I'm not sure whether the searches I make to your fingerprint will save or whether you'll need to do them yourself. The others, I'm just trying to see. Psychology of language acquisition is another. So that's also sitting in the biomedical space. So if those two terms are relevant to you, I would put them into a separate search and ask to match exactly. Or the other thing that you can do is if we leave, so let's say we leave cognitive processes here as well. You click on view as a search. So it's now opened it up as an advanced search. You can edit it. Turn off the broader. So you're now asking it to match exact only. Update it. Now you'll need to do this yourself because I can't save it in your in your account.
Yeah.
But if you now save it, so you've now created a subset search, I guess, of your fingerprint. So it will now only match exactly on those terms. So it means you can still have, cognitive process, psychology of language acquisition, etc. But it will only bring up an exact match. The positive of that is, or the advantage of that is it will cut out all those irrelevant medical opportunities. The downside of that is that, say, for example, there was something, although see, in here it might be okay. Because you've got education, we're just kind of sitting at the top of, it's those broader funding opportunities that you are eligible to apply for, but don't have necessarily an education focus. So that's the only risk that you run in terms of not having visibility of funding opportunities. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. But you might also argue that if there are broader funding opportunities that are relevant to you, now I don't know if Sharon's still online. I don't know whether perhaps the faculty plays a role in communicating some of those anyway. In which case, it's you want to focus your search on the narrower ones. You just need to play around with it.
I am still here, Helen.
Thanks, Sharon.
Hi. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we, as a faculty research office, we would advertise the more broad opportunities on Workplace. However, when researchers contact me directly, I can do more specific searches for you in RP as well if you're having trouble trying to find what you're looking for. So essentially we can see both roles.
So your advice is that, Helen, that I should use more like no need to stick to exact match. So it can be like a general match. Then that can open up different opportunities. Even though sometimes I'll receive things that are not relevant.
No, I'd almost go the other way, or I would say set up two searches. One that is exact, or exact and narrow, so that you're not losing them in the forest of information that you're going to be receiving through a general search. I should have pointed out, so I talked about exactly and we talked about advanced. I didn't show you what generally is just a shortcut that includes all of these three options here: exact, broader and narrower. So if you hit generally, it will go both up the branch and down the branch and just bring in a whole heap of things.
Yep.
So I personally would go a narrower, an exact or narrower search set up separately, and a broader search set up separately. But you've got to see what works for you. Yep. And I'm happy to have a chat with you after you've have a play around with it. Maybe in a week or two, it's still not quite doing what you'd like. Get in touch with me directly, and we can play with it some more. Or get in touch with Sharon. I mean, we can help you through it.
Yep. Thanks very much.
That's okay. Sharon, does this cut off at some point automatically, or will it keep going until we turn it off?
Shall I stop recording now?
Probably.
Have you finished the session?
Look, no. Well, I've certainly finished the session in terms of the presentation. It's now just I'm happy to answer, if there are still any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But in terms of presentation, I think we're done.
Thanks very much, Helen and Sharon.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Helen.
No, thank you, everybody. Yeah, look, I hope you've got something out of it. As I said, I'll send out some slides, and hopefully they'll be able to assist you with your searches. And I'd be interested in any feedback you've got on how they can things that you'd like to see in them that will make them work better for you. Okay. Good luck with your searches, everyone.